Adjusting ski bindings is a really useful skill to know. It will help you when you come to change your skis or boots, and it can just be a real day saver in the event of any issues with your setup while you're on the mountain. All alpine bindings on the market are all pretty similar to each other, with their own slight differences in adjustment. The principles are the same and base themselves around 3 different steps. These 3 steps are adjusting the correct forward pressure, toe and anti-friction device height, and then your din. But of course, make sure to check your workshop manual to ensure you're performing the right process for your exact binding. In terms of tools, it's pretty simple. You're going to want a good old large posi free driver and then a flathead screwdriver. So I'll just start with how to adjust the correct length on demo or rail bindings, because these are the most simple. They've got levers both in the toe and the heel to help move the toe and heel forwards and backwards depending on your boot. So as you'll see on the binding, they've got numbers, and to get the correct number, you just look at the inside heel of your boot and it will have what's called the boot sole length. So for this 26.5 head, the boot sole length is 305 millimeters. And that's the length of the sole from the toe to the heel. So it's 305 millimeters from the toe to the heel. So now that I've got the boot sole length, I can then look at the markings on the binding and move the toe unit towards 305 and it'll snap into place, and same for the heel as well. Just move that forward to 305 and that's it, in place. Once you've got the correct length set up, you can then snap the boot into the binding and make sure it all checks up fine. And that's the correct length setup. It's quite similar with normal bindings too. This is a hybrid alpine touring binding, but it's pretty similar job. But to set the length correctly, you just have to rotate the back screw. So it's good to get the toe in the binding and rotate the screw until the back of the heel is just touching the back of the boot. And then at that point, you can step the binding down on the boot and ensure the forward pressure is correct. On other bindings such as Salomon, Atomic and Marker, you'll have a forward pressure screw. So you need to make sure that screw is flush with the plastic in the back. This doesn't have it on this binding, so I don't need to check it, but it's worth saying that you do need to check the forward pressure screw is flush with the back of the binding too. You can just screw it forwards or backwards just to make sure it's flush. And then on many bindings, both alpine and touring bindings, or hybrid touring bindings, you'll need to adjust the toe height or the anti-friction device height. This can be simply done by grabbing a bit of paper, lowering the anti-friction device all the way at the bottom so it slams down to the bottom, inserting the paper in between your boot and the AFD, and slowly raising the AFD until you feel a bit of tension between the paper and the AFD. So I'm going to keep moving it to make sure it's free to move until it gets snagged a bit. Once I feel the paper is snagged and I can't pull it out without ripping it, I'm going to go a few turns up again to make sure it's fully butted up against it, and then slowly turn it until the paper starts moving. There you go. So there's just the perfect gap. So the paper's moving with a bit of resistance, but the paper's not ripping as I try to pull it out. And that means you've got the perfect gap between the boot and the AFD on the toe of your binding. And then the last thing to set up is the din of your binding. So if you don't know the din of your binding, head over to this video up here and you'll be able to see our video recommending what din to choose based on your weight and your ski style. Once you know the din that you ride with, you can then adjust it simply. Start with the boot in the binding, of course. Start with the toe and adjust your din appropriately based on what you normally ride with. Again, if you're using a new din, it's worth going out with a screwdriver just to make any changes on the fly on the piece as you ski with the skis and you think you might need to adjust, raise or lower the din as you ski. And then with the toe, you can also just adjust the din the same. Some people rock different dins in the toe and the heel, but I'd recommend if you're new to adjusting your din, just use your stated din range and go from there and make adjustments as and when you need. And then I wanted to just quickly touch on full-on touring bindings like this here. If you're totally new to touring bindings, then I would definitely recommend you drop your skis into a workshop to get them set properly. This is because they need a very exact gap for each binding, and it varies between every binding. So this Salomon binding would probably be different to a Dynafit or marker binding, the gap that you need. But otherwise, apart from knowing that gap, adjusting a touring binding is pretty simple because you can just get your toe in. The toe generally needs no adjustment at all because it's usually fixed onto the ski. So get the toe in, take a flathead screwdriver, or it might also be a posi drive. So just keep adjusting that heel until you've got enough room for your boot to go into the pins, but not so far that the pins are way out of the binding. And then once you've got enough space there, I'm just gonna go to the back or to the floor here because I don't trust this table. You can step into your binding like so and set the correct distance between the toe pins and the back of the boot. Again, check with your binding manufacturer as to the exact tech gap that you need for tech bindings because they all vary differently. Once you've set that gap, that's it, done. Tech bindings are really simple. So I hope you found this ski workshop video useful. If you do have any questions about adjusting your own ski bindings, then pop a comment below and I'll try to answer as soon as possible. And then if you're ready to grab yourself a pair of ski bindings, then head over to our friends at Surf Dome to check out their range. I'll pop a link down below. See ya.